can't hear my intro music, so I don't know. Was that a good fade out? Did that one work? I have no idea. So I'm trying to run this off of my other computer now, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I have a slight delay on my front screen here, where normally I would have the video, the quote unquote confidence monitor. So if you see me looking down here, I'm basically just looking to make sure my video is still working and operating as it's supposed to. But welcome. It's Sunday, and I have extra noises going on now. I got to get used to this. I got to get used to this. So bear with me. Something major happened on Friday. Uh, really big deal. I can't stress how big of a deal this was. But I turned 41. So it's my 41st birthday on Friday, and it's an interesting day. It's just one of those days that you kind of sit back and you're like, man, what an amazing day of sleep. I took a grown man nap. That was my day. I took a grown man nap, and I got my oil change. So yeah, productive. Went out to dinner with the family, enjoyed the day, or enjoyed my evening. Got a new 3D printer that I'm looking forward to trying out and seeing how well that works. So we'll see if that one is the right one, the one that helps me start making all sorts of little trinkets and whatever. I don't even know what I'm gonna make. We'll find out exactly what I'm going to make. I'm not sure just yet, but we'll see. And let me get this turned off so we don't hear all of that noise. So, of course, um, we came through, just politically speaking, we came through the weekend expecting to actually see a stimulus update. And of course, in typical government fashion, we saw zero. So, we're going to talk today a little bit about some things related to that. And, it's just interesting to me. And this one is titled and related to personal responsibility. And we're going to dig into that. But it's interesting to me to see where people draw certain lines. And that part is one that I guess I understand because I used to be there in a sense, right? I used to have a certain viewpoint. Used to think I had life kind of figured out. I just felt like I kind of knew where things were going and that sort of stuff. But I kind of, I guess you could say, evolved. I guess beyond that, once I started seeing how the system was really and truly set up, and shocker, if you haven't been paying attention, uh, it's not set up for us to win. And we're going to dig into that a little bit. I had some interesting debates, I guess you could say, on Facebook with a longtime friend and another cat, and as well as one of my uncles. And it's just interesting to see where people tend to draw the line and where they don't, and how they think, how certain people think they haven't been living off the government dole, uh, for pretty much their life, especially their adult life, based on certain industries and things like that. Um, but then personal responsibility um, comes in, and it's required. When we start talking about um, college loan forgiveness and things like that. Well, now we need to be personally responsible, but the government, maybe not, right? So anyway, we're gonna dig into some of that. But first off, because everything is happening and it's happening pretty quickly, we basically have vaccines being administered here in the United States of America. And we also now have the first doses of Moderna's vaccine having been shipped in the U.S. So this is from Axios, and it says the first shipments of Moderna's coronavirus vaccine were sent from a distribution center in Olive Branch, Mississippi, on Sunday morning. This is the AP reporting, they say. And the planned delivery of millions of doses of the Moderna vaccine, which has a 94.1 efficacy rate, comes amid a dangerously high coronavirus caseload across the country that could be exacerbated by holiday travel. And this is driving the news. The Moderna vaccine will be distributed to thousands of cities. Army General Gustavo Perna, Chief Operating Officer of Operation Warp Speed, said at a news conference on Saturday. Roughly 2.9 million doses of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, which has a 95, which is about 95% effective, were shipped last week. So the vaccine's getting out there. I personally know, well, I know more than two, but the first two that I knew were two friends of mine, and I checked, I checked with one of them's husband this week, and I was like, "Hey, she still have all her limbs?" Like just checking. Like I just want to make sure she's still good, right? And he said, "Yeah, she's doing fine." So it's being administered. And it's interesting to see the backlash of Republicans getting the vaccine. And look, I get it, right? Like I understand. We've been through this phase of denial, you know, especially the administration specifically, where they played it down. And news came out this week where they actually were withholding information. They knew it was going to ravage minority communities and wanted to hold that information back because they didn't want it to. They didn't want the information to get out and cause some form of panic or whatever raggedy excuse they tried there. So all of those things, notwithstanding, I it's like I get that you see those things and you're like, nah, y'all don't deserve this vaccine. Um, you've been denying this the entire time. You've gone through all these steps. You've backed, Trump's play in downplaying it while he, privately was telling, um, what's his name? I forget his name, but the author privately telling him how terrible it was, but telling us it wasn't that bad. It's going to go away. It's going to go away shortly. We have 15 cases. It'll be down to zero here shortly. Stuff like that. While he's telling in private audio recordings how terrible it is and how really dangerous it is. So I get that, right? But just on a government continuity standpoint, like you guys know the government's going to have to get this, right? Like the government officials, they're going to get this, regardless of your political sway. They're going to get the vaccine. It's inevitable. It has to happen. There it just is what it is, right? Um, so I understand all that, but then on the flip of that, we know that uh, we have to, as a country, we have to get to a place to where we can control COVID. The more people that are in the faces of others and things of that sort, the more those cases are going to increase. So we have to get it out there. Whoever's getting it first or second, you know, I understand. We have to get those that are highly impacted by this. The first responders, things like that. They're gonna get it. The military, they're getting it. Things like that. Like there's all of these levels of things before it gets down to like quote unquote general public. Jim Pop will get it whenever we get it. It's not going to come down to us unless there's you know basically the pecking order is met in that sense. So, I'm not necessarily tripping on the Trump administration getting the vaccine. You know, it is what it is. They're going to um, they're going to get it because they need it. And I'm double checking my audio here. Okay, yeah. Told y'all I'm working on this new system, and I thought for a second I was like, wait a minute, it's my audio coming through. So I had to double check that real quick. All right. So it's good news. Operation Warp Speed is getting this stuff out. Not gonna dig into it really, but there's some issues with which states are getting the vaccine. Michigan uh, was not getting the vaccine in the numbers that it needed to get the vaccine. Of course, that looked like political retribution for them not electing Trump as the president, for them not, overturning the vote and all that sort of stuff. Like, that's what it looks like. Is it that? I don't know. The general that's, ahead of, what was his name? Said it right here. Gustav Perner, I believe, was the one that was in the press conference, and he said that he misspoke, or he read out the wrong numbers or something like that. I don't know. You know, is what it is, man. Like these sort of political gamesmanship things are going to be happening, whether or not they purposefully are withholding it from Michigan or not because they didn't elect Trump. We'll wait. We'll see what comes out in the wash. I'm pretty sure we'll find out something at some point. We'll find something out about that happening. So the big news, obviously, is with the stimulus, and we still don't have a deal. The stimulus is not it's not agreed upon. They're still fighting over whether or not they want to give excuse me, give certain money to businesses and the states, and how much to people, and you know the Republicans tried to sneak in. Oh shoot, let me find it real quick before I misspeak. And Democrats were trying to actually sneak in some stuff as well. So they're basically going back and forth, trying to sneak in their little pet projects. Oh, I remember what it was. Republicans were trying to sneak in a restriction on the Fed, right? Like this is super rich to me, right? So they go this entire presidency and they don't care about budget, right? They don't care about, you know, any sort of deficit or anything like that, right? They're supposed to be the party of conservatism, right? Like they're supposed to pay attention to the deficit, right? They're supposed to rein in spending. But the last two Republican presidents, matter of fact, every Republican president in my 41 years has not cared one bit about the deficit. Reagan blew it up, right? Let's say HW. I don't really know. Maybe he didn't spend as much as the others, but he did go to war. So I'm pretty sure he spent quite a bit. Bush blew it up. Trump blew it up. Like, I mean, we can say they're conservatives and by name, right? Like we can say conservatives, but are they? Like, I mean, they don't seem to care about the deficit, debt, budget until it's a Democrat that's in office. Then, oh, we care about the deficit. We care, right? So they tried to basically sneak in, um, an attempt uh, to limit the Fed's ability to spend more money under the Biden administration, and it's just rich to me. It's very rich that they would try to do that at this point, but at the same time, they didn't care as much under Trump. So it's interesting that that's coming about, and that's what's holding up help. And so the actual stimulus bill, looking at $600, right? And I mentioned this before. $600 is $600, right? It's going to help some people, but $600 after, if you had a family, 1,200, in, was it May? I think they sent out checks, something like that. $1,800 for the year, depending on how many kids you have. I don't know. Maybe you got over 2,000, 1,800, 2,000, whatever. So you drop another six on there. I mean, they're not really moving the needle. I mean, they're not. They're just not. So this is where the personal responsibility discussion comes in, particularly for me. We were talking about colleges, or excuse me, college loans and the forgiveness of those loans. And the question was, that continued to be posed. Well, what next? Car loans, mortgages, what next? And for me, I'm like, okay, right? Like, and here's the reason, right? And I know, of course, all of you deficit hawks, you're going to be like, oh my God, we can't do that. Okay, so let's look at um, what the government tends to do. 2009, Obama takes office, and we were basically, you know, on the brink of a collapse within, I think, 2 months, 2 or 3 months. Um, the economy collapsed. Similar to what happened this year with COVID, it just so happened at the very beginning of Obama's presidency. They came in and they said, hey, you know what? Let's just go ahead and let's make some money, right? Make as in quote unquote print. Now, we tend to say print, and I'm going to say print in here because it's simpler to grasp conceptually. They said they want to print some money so that they could go ahead and stave off this coming collapse that we're about to hit. Right now, Ben Bernanke, who was over the Fed, he had an interview where he basically stated, they're not technically printing money. All they're doing is just kind of taking the decimal and they just move it over a couple pieces places. Takes a couple seconds in the computer. Now, mind you, that was maybe 15 years, 14, 15 years ago when he gave that interview, right? So, come the point where the banks are collapsing, all of these issues are happening in 2009. Not going to go through all of them, but if you were alive then paying attention, you knew that basically there was a housing crisis that had happened, they subprime loans, all of that sort of stuff. It caused massive foreclosures. And once the banks started losing out, what did the government do? Government came in and said, hey, 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 here you go. Peel you off a little bit here and there. I'm going to go ahead and give you, these trillions of dollars or however much they gave them, billions or trillions, whatever. Basically handed these banks because why? This is where the phrase too big to fail comes in. If they fail, it's catastrophic for America. Okay, maybe, maybe so, but we don't know. Why? Because the government came in and said, hey, you know what? You've been messing over people, for the last decade or so. Um, you know what? Don't worry about it. Here's billions of dollars, right? They gave money to, I believe it was Wells Fargo, and the Wells Fargo CEO ended up getting a massive bonus, millions of dollars, right? Mind you, unemployment through the roof. I believe we had hit 13% or something like that during this time period, right? In terms of unemployment. So we hit the 13%. Whatever the number was, it just kept rising, and unemployment didn't, get resolved immediately. It took time for that to come down. Came down to what, 4 or 5 or whatever when Obama left office, maybe 6. I don't know. So they do all this. They give all this money. People at the bottom aren't getting the money. This is when you get like the Occupy Wall Street movement, where they basically go out and they're marching and they're protesting against, essentially Wall Street being bailed out, right? So all of this stuff happens. And then 10 years later, we come back to another recession. And what do? They say, you know what? We're going to create this paycheck protection program. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to give $500 billion. We're going to give that to businesses. And mind you, they haven't even spent all of the money that they were giving to businesses. That's part of what I was saying the Republicans were trying to sneak in to say that the Fed needs to be restrained under Biden, right? They didn't want to write a blank check. Mind you, the Fed has been manipulating markets the entire time, but now, no, let's restrain them, okay? And so once we hit this recession, they come out with this PPP. The PPP releases, they give out some money, and what happens? Record unemployment. Why? Mind you, certain businesses use the money effectively, right? I'm not going to, you know, deal with absolutes here and say that every business, did wrong by the PPP. But there were businesses that didn't need PPP. But PPP ends up, if you do it right, it ends up being a forgiven loan. You have to request forgiveness. You have to show that it went to employees, blah, blah, blah. But there are tax implications where it counts as income. So if you got 100,000 in PPP, that's an extra 100,000 now that you have to offset with expenses. As a business owner, you don't ever want to have to deal with an extra 100 grand to offset, especially if you have an LLC or an S corp, because those things pass down to the business owner. That means the business owner has to pay 100 grand, right? Sidebar there, but those are just things that business owners of LLCs and S corps think about. So for the PPP program to be successful, what it needed to do from their perspective, that they continue to keep trying, is they needed it to trickle down, right? They needed to give the money to the businesses take the money, and the businesses pass it down by keeping the employees hired. Well, there were a few problems with that. One, it wasn't enough money to keep people on indefinitely, right? And two, human nature. Human nature sets in, and then you start getting things like Harvard getting, I don't know what, $12 million in PPP. They have an endowment, I think, in the billions, if not billions. It's definitely in the 9 figures, right? Like, I mean, or I guess not 9, was that 12? um, it's ridiculous the amount of money that they have, but they're out here getting PPP, right? All these businesses that should, mind you, if we were running on pure capitalism, which, by the way, I suggest go to jasonstapleton.com, check out, I think, the second to last episode, and he talked about capitalism and the problems with capitalism. I've said for a long time now, we don't have capitalism here, not like the true form of capitalism. Excuse me, sound like I had a frog in my throat. uh, Not really like the true form of capitalism, right? Because if it were, the government wouldn't be bailing out these companies, right? We consistently bail companies out. Consistently. We're manipulating markets all the time. Like America, like you can pound your chest and America, capitalism, all of this, all you want. But we're not. We're more like kappa socialism, right? Like it really is what it boils down to, right? This form of capitalism where we can blow it as business owners, right? We just blow it. We just don't save up money, right? We don't prepare ourselves for downtimes, right? We haven't prepared our employees financially, right? We just overextended ourselves continuously, and then what happens? Government comes in and says, "Here you go," and they just sprinkle a little bit of money on the problem. They do this consistently, over and over and over again. But there's this segment where it doesn't happen. There's a small segment, these small business owners that are too wealthy, or let me not say wealthy. The small business makes too much money for them to, claim a certain hardship, but they're not big enough to fail, right? They don't make enough to be considered struggling. I mean, they don't make they make more than, which is deemed to be struggling, but they don't make enough to where they're too big to fail. So they're in this weird gray spot. And this is the area that a lot of people get employed and then they find themselves unemployed because a small business owner that has 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 employees, right? It's a struggle for them to be able to maintain an employee that isn't making the money, especially when an economy is shut down, right? So all of these things boiled in together, and it's like I could care less or couldn't care less if somebody gets a W off of their student loans being forgiven. Why? Because I've lived through two recessions now, two of them. And both times we've handed billions to businesses and we've just trickled a little bit of money out for people. So I don't care if the person went out and got a degree in underwater basket weaving. I really don't care. I don't. If you want to stimulate the economy, right? Now, mind you, this is just from the statistics of it. The economy was built on 90% plus. I want to say it was 91%, but I'm just going to say 90% plus consumerism. That's what our economy was built on. The economy currently was overextended to the point where we depended on 90% of our growth based on consumerism. So that meant the economy crashed pretty much because people stopped spending for 2 weeks, right? Couldn't go to the stores. These places were closed. Couldn't go do this, that, and the other. Couldn't go to bars. Couldn't do consumerism, right? Consumer spending is what fueled our economy. So, consumer spending controls our economy, but you want to give the money to the businesses who need the consumers to stay afloat, right? That was what the 1250 was supposed to be for last time. It was supposed to be, to keep things afloat. Well, I guess it was what nine something or whatever, and then 18 if you were a couple, something like that, whatever it was. So that was supposed to keep people afloat, right? And what did they want to happen? They wanted you to get that check, and they want you to blow it. That's it. They don't want you to put it in the mattress, right? They just want you to blow it because if you're not spending your dollars, the economy halts, completely halts. But they keep giving money to the bit. Do you see where I'm going? Like, do you understand like how weird this is for our government to continue making the same mistake of giving money to businesses knowing that we need consumer spending? So how can you increase consumer spending? Get rid of debt. What do people do with money most times? They get the money, and what do? They spend it, right? We live outside of our means. It's not what I suggest. I've done it way too long, right? You get a raise at work, and it's like, oh, you know what? I can afford this car now. I'm gonna go get hey, let me go get the wife a car. That's what we keep doing. Our bills follow our income. If our income increases, our bills increase. It's a rat race to the bottom, and we continuously do it because We live in a country that, as an example, shows us that debt doesn't matter. We're not going to pay off our debt. We're not. Our debt is massively out of control, massively out of control. And I can tell you, they have no expectation of paying it off. Trump said he was going to, completely reverse that in 8 years. He only got four. And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have come close because he extended, I think, extended us by an extra 9 trillion or something like that. That's no, no, no. And prior to COVID, we were not paying off any debt. We were not. We were flipped upside down yet again, still operating under the premise that we can just run up this bill as much as we want. So, what do you think America's going to do? America's a country where you can't you can't gamble, right? Like you can't openly gamble in a lot of places, right? Let's just take um, here in Texas. You had a big boom, quote, well, I wouldn't say boom, but there was a bunch of these little what they call game rooms that would pop up. These game rooms, you go in, slot machines, stuff like that. Couldn't pay cash, so of course, when you have rules, what do people do? They find a way to get around them. So they wouldn't pay in cash. They pay in things like flat screen TVs. Uh, they had big bulk packages of toilet paper, right? Like, just whatever, right? Just extra things that they could give you as prizes, but not cash, right? Excuse me. Those that were paying with cash were getting raided, and why is this? Why is this? So they were doing these things because gambling. They don't want you to gamble, right? They have laws against gambling. But you know what you could do? You could open up a brokerage account and you can actually buy stocks or like buy options. Um, you can trade futures using what's called margin. And margin is basically whatever brokerage firm you're using, them just giving you money, right? Now, if this sounds like you walking into a casino and being staked, that's exactly what it is. You have $1,000, and the casino says, "Here's a credit line of 3,500. Go ahead, do your thing." Right now, certain places that's legal in America, Vegas, things like that, right? But overall, they don't want you to do it. Like you can't do that here in Texas. There's really not any gambling houses. I think there's one spot down in I think Laredo, somewhere like that, where you can gamble. Most people here in Texas they go to Louisiana, right? So America has these rules against gambling that you can't do. They try to protect you. Gambling in sports, illegal. Can't do it. They try to block you. But then all of a sudden, gambling in sports becomes okay when the NFL owners, Jerry Jones, those cats, they end up, investing in DraftKings. Now we found a way to make that gambling kind of work, but then that's not available in all states, right? Like they have all these weird rules, all these weird rules. But you can open a brokerage account and be staked thousands of dollars from whatever brokerage firm you're using, and you can gamble that you're making the right financial decisions with that money. I mean, this is America that we live in, right? So you can do all these things, but you can't do all these things. But you can do these things that we want you to do in this particular vacuum, in this particular area, but you can't do them in the other. Right? It's hypocritical, like down to the core, like the way all of this is set up. It's the system is set up in this way because they just continue to snowball these things on top of each other. And so bringing this back around, they continue to do these things with business. They continue to hand out all this money, Continue to say we're going to we're going to bail these companies out. And if it the economy, I mean, the economy is what it is, right? It's it is what it is. It's built on consumerism. And if that's going to be the case, if you want people to really start spending money and you want them to blow a stimulus check, put it in their hands. Stop giving it to businesses, right? As a business owner, as me, as a business owner running this company, if right now I go to the account and I just wipe out all the cash, and then come January 3rd or 4th when I have to run payroll and I don't have any payroll, I can't go to the government and be like, hey, government, uh, you know, you got any more of that PPP for me? That's not personal responsibility, right? So how far is that line of personal responsibility that is acceptable to you? Because for some reason we tend to take personal responsibility out when we talk about business. But what is business made of but people, right? They they wanted to make, this whole concept of uh, corporations being people, and the reason they did that was for political donations, right? They wanted these corporations are people. They're involved in the economy and blah 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 blah, so they should be able to do this sort of thing, blah blah blah, right? But a company is nothing but people. So if companies don't have to be personally responsible for their idiocy, why do people, right? Why do the individuals who went out and got their underwater basket weaving degree, why can't they default on their loan and have it forgiven? Or, as my cousin said on the same thread I was referring to, you go out, raise your kids, do your thing, go back to school, get your degree, and have loans. You did everything right, took care of your business, handled everything the way you're supposed to handle it. But then you got all these loans, right? You got all these loans, and for some reason, it's only ever discussed when it, relating to like liberal arts degrees and these things that people tend to not value, right? It comes down to, I don't think your education is worth my money. That's what it boils down to. I pay taxes. I shouldn't have to pay for your ignorant degree. That's what it boils down to, right? That's what the argument boils down to, in my opinion. But it doesn't matter if you think it's valuable. It doesn't matter if you think that person got the appropriate education, right? Because in a lot of people's minds, and in the friend that I was mentioning, in his mind, it's a bunch of lazy people that don't have personal responsibility. And for me, it's like you're just washing out all the people who did the right thing and ignoring how the government and business continues to, live off of, or the business, excuse me, continues to live off of the government. Where whole industries, you can say I haven't lived off the government, but if you work in the oil and gas industry, you lived off the government. Let's just be real. They subsidize oil and gas. If you have bought anything from a United States farm, more than likely, you're living off government help. Why? Because it's subsidized. We give all sorts of money to the meat industry just off the rip. Why do we do that? Because they want to keep the prices artificially low. Your lettuce may cost $5, but the government doesn't want us to have to pay $5, so they offset it. They subsidize it, right? They do all these things that they continue to do. But for some reason, it's wrong when people start getting a hand up. I don't understand the thinking. I don't get it. So I don't care. I really don't. I don't care if somebody else gets a win. Let them get a win. Let them get a win, man. I don't care. I'm all for personal responsibility. I preach it all the time, especially when I'm talking to the kids. I preach it all the time. You have to take responsibility for your actions. So I get it. I'm right there with you. I agree. But I'm not going to sit here and act like somebody having a loan forgiven means that there's some bum that's living off the government and you're not. What do you think the tariffs are? Right? Obama famously, well, I guess not famously, I guess not a lot of people care about tariffs, but Obama, uh, he instituted tariffs because he wanted to save uh, jobs in Michigan or wherever, somewhere. Uh, what he basically did was he instituted a tire tax. He ended up saving 1,500 to 1,800 jobs, but it cost America way more. And by America, I mean the people, right? Because a tariff is a tax on the people. They don't work. Bush tried tariffs. They don't work. Same thing. Obviously, if you were awake during Trump's presidency, he tried tariffs. They don't work, right? They just don't work. I don't care how you slice it. Tariffs don't work. Okay? But what is that? That is the government manipulating markets for businesses. That's what it boils down to. That's the government with the not so invisible hand maneuvering and manipulating these markets so that businesses continue to make money and don't go out of business because they can't operate against foreign companies. The price wise, right? So if the American company is charging $50 for the tire, but you can get it from China with shipping and everything else that's involved for 40, what do you think the American company is going to do? They're going to import those tires from China because they can save $10 per tire. That's capitalism, right? Like that's a pure form of capitalism right there. I can get a better price over here. I'm going to go over there, get a better price. I'm going to save $10 per tire, and that profit is going to go to help grow my business. So what does the government do? The government says, oh, you know what? Tires coming from China, we put a $10 tax on them. So now you have to deal with all the shipping and imports and all that sort of stuff from China, or you can just buy the American tire for the same price or a lower price. That's what the tariffs do. It's the same thing. It's just another way of handing out help to a certain industry. And how is that paid? By all of the American people consuming that particular product. We're the ones that pay for tariffs. Trump always said China paid for these tariffs and we got billions of dollars. It's a flat out lie. China doesn't pay for a tariff. They don't. They don't. Not in the physical monetary sense. They may pay in the terms of like loss of business because people stop getting that good from over there, right? Like so they may have that, but they don't pay in that sense. They don't drop dollars in some American, bucket and all of a sudden we now have billions of dollars. That's not how it works. You pay for a tariff. If there's a tariff on lettuce and the lettuce is coming in from China, everybody that is buying the lettuce from China is having to pay the higher fee because the importer is going to raise their price because of the tariff. It's just the way it works. There's no way around it. So everybody can get these handouts. Everybody can have these manipulated markets, right? The whole oil industry can be manipulated by the government in order to save jobs and boost the American oil supply, right? Because of all these reasons. Pick your reason, it doesn't matter. But the American government can do that, and that's okay. But the American government can't write off these loans. That's a bridge too far. Color me unimpressed with the argument. Now, if you've been this whole time arguing about the deficit and debt and all this and like you've been that way through this entire process when it comes to everything that Trump has done with his spending, the budget that we've had through all of these Trump Congresses, right? Like, if you've been on that side and you are like dead set against all of this government spending and you haven't wavered and you don't want these industries subsidized and you don't want the American government handing out all this money to these businesses, I'm with you. But if you're fine with the government doing all these other things, but you don't want your fellow man to get a loan forgiven, I'm not with you. And I probably never will be. All right, so let's transition. Last segment. Since I went on a ridiculously long rant, just one of them days. Just one of them days. All right, so this is one thing that I'm very interested in seeing what comes of it. Two things actually, but we're going to start off with this one. This is an article from Axios. There's a new tool, or this the article title is "New Tool Watches for Voter Purges Ahead of Georgia Runoffs." So it says a new tool lets voters in Georgia sign up for automatic notifications of any sudden changes to their voting status that could prevent them from casting ballots in the pivotal January 5th runoffs that will determine party control of the Senate. This is driving the news. Voteflare.org is the site. It was a site, created by Harvard University's Public Interest Tech Lab. Went live on Friday. Advocates earlier this month filed a lawsuit claiming nearly 200,000 Georgia voters were wrongly purged from the rolls in 2019, disproportionately hitting younger, poor, and minority voters, right? And I'll come back to that in a moment. So this is what they're saying. And there's other parts here. I'm just going to skip down a little bit here. The irony in Georgia is that Democrats don't trust the governor or the Secretary of State, especially after what happened in 2018. And Republicans don't trust the governor or the Secretary of State after what happened in November. This is, I believe, Dhruv Gupta, a 2020 Harvard graduate who worked on the project. And that's absolutely right, right? The governor election, big old issue with Stacey Abrams, and I believe it went to a runoff, and the governor was actually the person in the runoff against Stacey Abrams, but also was overseeing the election. There's all sorts of stuff that was like, this doesn't pass the smell test, right? And here goes the GoPro. See, I almost made it all the way through this without the GoPro messing up. I was this close to the GoPro not messing up. But such is the GoPro. That's all right. I got software for this. I'll just artificially zoom this thing in. Can't wait. The Christmas shopping and all of this has everything on back order. And so the cameras that I'm looking to get and bring in, which will stop all of this stuff, they're just on back order. I can't get anything until January. It's crazy. One of the stores that my favorite local store to go do all my camera and video equipment shopping, they completely changed. Like, you can't even walk in and browse. They just went completely to rentals. And they went there specifically because of all the COVID stuff that was blocking them from doing a lot of sales. So very interesting. So anyway, back to this. So you take the 2018 election with Stacey Abrams and whatnot, and then you take 2020, where Republicans are just completely up in arms because the governor and the Secretary of State didn't overturn the election. Completely up in arms, right? Like, no, we can't take these votes. We can't trust the will of the people. Something isn't right. We got to reverse this. And they didn't do it, so they don't want it. I mean, so they're on the outs with the governor and the Secretary of State. So one of my biggest problems with our election system is that we are consistently like keeping people from voting, right? Like, it's the weirdest thing. You need people to vote so that their voice is heard, so that we can elect the right people, quote unquote. But, well, I'm not gonna paint with a broad brush here. I'm gonna be very specific. But Republicans are constantly trying to find ways to stop people from voting. Right? There's really no same sides here. I mean, both sides here. There's no both sides argument here. Republicans are constantly trying to stifle the vote. In Houston, they tried, or in Texas, they tried to get rid of, in all the major cities, they tried to get rid of all but one voting place to drop off ballots. I think there were four in Houston. And if you've never been to Houston, it's massive. It could take you an hour to go from south to north, right? East to west, probably the same thing. I think it's a little wider than it is taller, um, but it's massive. It's a massive area. And they wanted one place, right? They tried to purge um, 280,000 votes in this election, right? Like, I mean, they just tried to wipe them out, get rid of them, and call them invalid, and say no, get rid of, right? Like, there's all anyway. I can go down the line. It's consistently a Republican thing that they try to stifle the vote as much as possible. And one of the things that they do is they have voter purges, where basically, if you were on the roll, I mean, on the well, yeah, I guess on the roll. So if you were on the roll for, being able to vote in a certain area, after 2 years or whatever time period, they just delete you. You're registered to vote, and then you're not. And if you moved, they just send out a letter or something. But if you moved, you don't get that, right? Like, you don't get that mail because you're in a different place or whatever, like whatever the case may be. But they just deleted you, right? And so this idea of voter purging is just it just seems like it should be un-American, right? It just seems like it should be un-American. Just flat out. Um, we want people to vote. We want people involved. And if we consistently get rid of people, it makes it difficult. In some places where they do this, you have to register 30 days before a certain deadline, or 60 days before a certain deadline. So if you don't find out that you were purged until 2 days into the deadline, then you can't vote, right? Like, we find all these ways, right? Felons, right? We don't want felons to vote because for some reason they did their time, they're out. For some reason, we can't allow them to vote, right? Can't allow them to vote. Doesn't matter what your felony is for. You're not allowed to vote, right? Even if you don't have a legit reason why, those same felons in majority of the cases um, can't own a gun, can't hold a gun, right? Like, we find all these ways to stomp on people's rights, all these ways. We just stomp on their rights. We're like, yeah, yeah, Second Amendment, but not for those people, right? Yeah, we want people to vote, but not for everybody. So anyway, I'm just ranting today. I'm just in a mood. I'm just ranting today. So anyway, this new tool, voteflare.org, FLARE.org, is a new tool to help people, um, with basically knowing whether or not they were purged or not. It seems like it's something the government should just provide, but they don't, because they don't want you to. Last thing, we're not going to dig into it because we're at time here, but I am interested to see what happens with Biden in Mexico. So, uh, article from Axios here: Biden and Mexico's Lopez Obrador discuss new approach to migration issues. And so it's President-elect Joe Biden and Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador discussed in a phone call Saturday, working together on a new approach to migration that offers alternatives to undertaking the dangerous journey to the U.S. Now, the only thing I'll say, because, like I say, we're at time here, this is something that again, we continuously fail at doing. And we had an episode 2 years ago, I think it was, um, where I was breaking down immigration over time and things of this sort. And we keep making the same mistake. And this is why I was largely against a wall, because a wall is not going to work. It's not going to fix the issue. The issue is you have a mass of people who can and are willing to do certain work, that want to come to America to do said work, and we're pushing them away saying, no, I don't care how broke you are. I don't care how good you are at this particular job. We do not want you to come here unless you go through this multi-year process, right? They always say you got to do it the right way, but it takes tens of thousands of dollars to do it the right way, and it takes years. And that's not just for people from Mexico. I have a friend from, where's he from? He's Dutch. And for him to get his wife here, it took him over $10,000, an attorney and all these things just to get her here. He was already here. And it's costly, man. It's costly, right? This wasn't a problem. And this is the last thing I'll reference here, but the Mexican Migration Project, or Mexican Migrant Project, or Migration Project, one of the two, they studied it from the 60s, I believe, 60s or early 70s up until now. And the harder we have become on border policies, the worse illegal immigration has become. Right? So as we continue to get stricter, we continue to see numbers rising. Right? There's a direct correlation there. And what used to happen was they would come over, they would work seasonally, then they go back to Mexico. They come over, work, and then they go back to Mexico. That's what they would do. But we decided we're going to make it extremely difficult for you to get here and to get back. So that means if you come here and work and you go back, you may not be able to come back to the States. It's a game that we've been playing for all this time, and we continue to play it, but it's just not working. We keep doing it, but it's just not working. So I'm interested to see, where does Biden take this? Does Biden end up working out something? I think there's something that we could do on this front from a labor perspective, where we can make this very effective for us to have labor come here, work, and be able to go back safely. We already kind of do some things like that. We had an episode not long ago with an immigration attorney out of San Antonio who spoke to some of these things. We just have a limitation. It's like 60,000 people or something, right? If we open up some of these programs, will that really help with this issue? We'll see. I can tell you this, anything short of building a wall, the people on the right aren't going to care, and they're not going to want it, and they're going to say that, you know, he's letting America be taken over. It's going to be a mess, but it's going to be interesting to watch these next 4 years to see how much hypocrisy really floats, because I'm already seeing it, you know, from folks on the left ignoring stuff that, you know, they call Trump out on, and folks on the right calling out Biden on stuff, right? Like that, like I say, with the deficit and all this stuff, like it's, buckle in. It's going to be an interesting 4 years. Anyway, enough of my ranting. This is the Political Free Agents. It is. We are the Political Free Agents. We do this thing twice a week, Sunday, 2 p.m. and Tuesday at 7 p.m. Join us. We're lining up some interviews that are going to be pretty interesting. I'm very much so looking forward to them. I definitely want to continue to urge everybody to do what you can to push yourself to the next level, no matter what that is, whether that's financially, health, whatever. Push yourself to the next level. Make sure that you are in a position where you're not dependent upon everything that the government is doing here, because, again, they're not out here for you. They're not cutting for you. They're cutting for themselves, and they're going to cut for business as much as they can. Anyway, have a great year. I want to end on a positive note. Duga. So I want you to check out this cat, Duga Art. If you notice a few weeks back, I added this painting back here. You can kind of see his signature right here on the bottom right. Duga, dope artist. Love his work. He has some amazing work. His colors, top notch. I absolutely love it. So check out Duga. Hit us up at politicalfreeagents.com. You can also catch us on social media, at PFA Podcast. Make sure you go to YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe. If you're on Facebook, go to the channel and like the channel. And go to the page and like the page. And that way you get notified every time we go live. We're PFA and we're out.